The story is about the peculiarities of dragons. The inquisitive listener will learn a lot about their manners and some moments from their history. The most interesting story is called The Evil Dragon. The story is about how the dragon got into the thick of the terrible events that we have to tell about. A girl, dressed in a short skirt and with a sword hanging from her waist, worked her way up through the dense forest, climbing a high mountain for several hours. When she arrived at the spot, she shouted, "This is your last day. Do you still remember that last time we fought?" A huge, silver-white dragon was lying on a rock, basking in the sun. Its back and neck were covered with large white spikes. Its heavy paws ended in claws that could easily tear human flesh. The dragon saw the stranger approaching him. He stood up on his 4 paws, spread his wings, and said, "There's that little girl again. How often does this happen?" The girl exclaimed, "Well, here I get to you, evil dragon. With this sword, I will definitely defeat you today." The dragon replied, "But if you don't mind, let's talk when I've finished my afternoon nap." The girl raised her large sword up and lunged forward, shouting, "I'll try much better this time." The dragon thought, "This girl really doesn't listen to others." The girl delivered a strong blow with her sword to the center of the dragon's chest. The dragon raised its sharp and long tail high above its head and corrected the scales on its chest. The girl stepped back a safe distance and said, "Shit!" The dragon scratched his face with his black pazour and replied, "How about we take a break?" The girl closed her eyes, concentrated, and found herself in the very center of the magic circle. The girl cried out, "Don't talk nonsense, it's not over yet." The girl raised her hand sharply upward, and a bright light illuminated the dense forest and the neighboring rocks. The girl said, "This is high-level magic." The dragon squinted his eyes and thought, "She could easily be the strongest opponent I've ever faced. I have to look at her as a serious opponent." The dragon lifted his head up, and thick black clouds began to form over his rock. The dragon thought, "This girl is very good at magic despite her age." The girl furrowed her eyebrows and shouted with her sword. The black clouds were illuminated by a bolt of lightning that passed through the dragon's body, tearing through the rocks. The dragon fell to the ground, stretching its paws forward. The girl jumped up a few times and said, "I did it. I just defeated that dragon." A few seconds later, the girl lay unconscious on the ground, the sword lying near her hand. The dragon sat with its wings folded and its upper tail raised. The dragon said, "My tail just stung her a little. I guess we'll stop here." The dragon's tail was so fast that the girl didn't even have time to blink an eye. The dragon turned its head and looked toward the bushes. The dragon smiled and said, "It seems that not only my tail hurts, but hers hurts too." The dragon looked towards the forest and shouted, "That was really high-level magic. Are you guys still there?" The bushes stirred, and small slugs with eyes that looked like pets began to crawl out of them. Each slug had toeless legs. The dragon took the girl in his arms and said, "Let's do as we normally do. You take her somewhere safe." The little slugs lined up in 4 rows like soldiers in an army. The dragon put the girl on top with a sad expression. The slugs moved forward, humming their favorite song. The dragon thought, "They are quite cute. If they existed on Earth, they would be famous mascots." The dragon opened its mouth and cried helplessly. The dragon thought, "I have never done anything wrong. All this is only happening because I am an evil dragon. They keep coming after me. Every week a new hero appears, but they stop appearing after they've been beaten up a few times." The dragon imagined a slender girl in long boots, short skirt, and with a confident look. He said, "It's a miracle she didn't kill me. They say she's the Demon King's assassin or something." There was not a single cloud in the sky, and the sun was pleasantly warm. The dragon was lying on a rock with his wings spread wide. He uttered, "This girl doesn't bother me, and now it's time to sleep." In a large and densely populated city, a young man was walking down the street. He was well dressed, shirt, tie, jacket, pants, and shoes. He said, "I am so tired, my dream is to become an ordinary Japanese clerk." The guy was approaching a stoplight and thought, "I really don't feel like going to work. Maybe I'll just try my luck at the lottery." The guy was staring at the traffic light with his mouth open. A few seconds later, the traffic light turned green. The guy took 3 steps forward and saw a truck moving at a very high speed. In the truck, the guy noticed a girl sitting on the front seat and kissing the driver. A little while later, the guy was lying on the crosswalk in a pool of blood. Taking his last breath, he said, "Damn couples." The dragon woke up, opened his eyes, and said, "That's all true." The dragon lay on the grass and said, "If you notice, the guy who got run over is me. Maybe that's why I became a dragon." The dragon looked at his paw and couldn't understand what had happened. In any case, he thought he would find the answer, but he knew for sure that in this world he had been reborn into a dragon. The dragon jumped up and flapped its wings. The birds sitting in the neighboring trees scattered in fear. The dragon said, "Even among dragons I am at the top. But calling me an evil dragon is not right at all." A few years after his rebirth, the dragon's life wasn't bad. Thanks to the slugs, he didn't feel lonely. The dragon rested his head on his paws and thought, "It's good that I don't have to work every day. Right now, every day is like Sunday. It's amazing. Even if someone like me had to be reborn, it wouldn't change anything." A thin voice sounded in the thick grass. "Boss, we finished the job." The dragon looked up and thought, "These are the slugs that always follow me." After a short pause, the dragon said, "Good." Surapachi was the first to jump out of the grass. Obedient but unnoticed, he was beginning to feel sad. Surapachi said, "Boss, the weather is good today." The second one to jump out of the grass was Surami, the most determined of the sisters. Surami said, "Boss, if I may, could you let me sit on your back?" The third to emerge from the grass was Surare, shy and always speaking in a low voice as if stuttering. Surare said, "I want to fly too." The dragon blinked his right eye and said, "Got it, okay? Climb on my back." Surapachi said, "I have been waiting for this for a long time, thanks, boss." Surami said, "That's cool." Surare asked, "Let me through." The dragon stood up on its hind legs, unfolded its wings, and said, "Everyone is ready." The dragon took off, flapping its wings, and roared, "Let's fly!" The slugs pressed hard against his back. A large, silver-white dragon flew high, passing through the fluffy clouds. The slug sitting on its back looked at the high mountains and the huge evergreen forest. The slug's senses were overwhelmed. Surapachi opened his mouth in surprise and said, "Wow, what beauty." Surami boldly looked forward and said, "Ugh, it's hard to breathe." Surare held his hands, which had no fingers on them, to his face and wept bitterly. The dragon said, "If my human life were as free, it would be as if my life as a servant was just a dream." Sitting behind Surapachi was surprised when the dragon reminded him that he was, in fact, a dragon. Surami noticed that the dragon looked like a real dragon racer. The dragon thanked them for the reminder. Lowering its altitude, the dragon saw the monster in the forest attacking the man. The slugs also noticed a man who, stripped of his weapon, was sitting on the ground next to a broken shield. Surare asked the dragon to save the man, and Surami supported him, reminding him that humans don't usually show slugs any kindness. Surapachi expressed concern for the fate of the man. Surare shared his desire to help the boy. The dragon remarked that the slugs were too kind. The boy waved his arms helplessly and screamed, begging for help as the huge Cyclops, 3 times his height, slowly approached. The Cyclops had 5 skulls hanging around his neck, and he enjoyed the lad's fear. The Cyclops' teeth gleamed in a smile, and he urged the boy to scream even louder, for the stronger the resistance, the greater the joy for him. The Cyclops had 2 small black horns on its head, and a body covered with black needles instead of hair. Someone touched the Cyclops' shoulder with their pazuras. The dragon thought that if he resolved this situation quickly, he would be the bad guy. Cyclops was surprised to notice the dragon and asked why he was here. The dragon replied that he just happened to be in this place. Cyclops furrowed his eyebrows, clenched his teeth, and asked if the dragon wanted to fight. The dragon warned him not to do anything stupid. Cyclops smiled and showed off his massive club, proudly proclaiming that this was his true strength. The dragon realized that in a normal situation, the Cyclops would have crushed him. The dragon approached and asked if the Cyclops could give him a good massage. Cyclops threw a few punches and retreated, exclaiming that the dragon could not be defeated. The dragon replied that he should have hit harder. The Cyclops, swinging his club, suggested that the dragon simply lie down and surrender. Then he rushed forward with all his might. The dragon's sharp white tail pierced the Cyclops' chest, and he screamed one last time. The next blow was so strong that the Cyclops flew off the ground and flew 10 meters in the air, hitting a large tree. All his talismans and people's skulls shattered into thousands of pieces. The dragon scratched himself on the back of his head and admitted that he might have overextended himself. If the Cyclops hadn't attacked him first, it would have gone without a collision. The dead Cyclops was sitting under a tree in a pool of blood. Suripachi and Surare thanked the boss for his help, and the dragon turned his attention to the man trying to get up and told him that everything was fine and that he should thank Surare. The man with tears in his eyes screamed for help and ran, bursting through the narrow path between the trees. The dragon watched the fleeing man and noticed that the man seemed to be in a panic. The dragon folded its wings and looked at its pet slugs. Surami remarked that it was incomprehensible how a human could do that to his savior. Suripachi pointed to an oak tree that was covered in blood, but the monster was not there. It seemed as if the corpse had disappeared. The dragon calmly looked at the oak tree and announced that his blow was not fatal and that he was not trying to kill the monster. However, he decided that it didn't matter and offered to return home. The slugs energetically jumped onto the dragon's back, which flew into the air. As they flew up to the cliff, the dragon announced that they had returned home. However, the bushes stirred and a slug ran out of them, sobbing loudly. The dragon looked at the crying slug and expressed concern, asking what had happened. The slug, trying to explain, said that the whole forest was filled with monsters. Slughorn jumped up a few times and told him that there were 3 monsters there. The dragon insisted that he be brought there as soon as possible. A few minutes later, the dragon found himself in a clearing where dead slugs lay. Anger flashed in his eyes and he screamed, demanding to know who had done this. A minotaur with sharp horns and a large axe on his shoulder came out of the thicket, followed by a guy in armor with a sword and a girl with a tail holding a magic ball. The guy with the horns raised his hand and announced that they were following Mao's orders and must deliver the dragon to him. The snake girl hissed, asking why the dragon hadn't bowed yet. The dragon, full of anger, growled and asked why they had killed his slugs if they had only come for him. The guy in armor chuckled, saying that they killed the slugs to piss off the dragon, and asked if the dragon didn't realize it. The snake girl offered to kill the dragon. The Minotaur looked angrily at the dragon and said that Mao didn't need someone like him. The guy in armor signaled to the snake girl that it was time to attack. The dragon looked menacingly at the monsters and ordered them to fight with his flying roar. But the battle was short. The Minotaur tried to strike the dragon with his axe, but was immediately caught by it. The dragon quickly grabbed the magic ball from the snake girl's hands. The broken rod remained in the girl's hands. The guy in armor tried to run away, but the dragon stopped him and threatened to do the same thing to him as he did to his friends. The guy with the horns stood in front of the dragon, trembling with fear, and apologized for his actions. The dragon agreed to be taken to Mao and flew into the air, leaving the forest beneath him. The dragon was flying at great speed, and the guy in armor was pointing at Mao Castle and warning of its ominous name. The castle doors opened, and inside, Mao was sitting on the throne. A guy in armor ran into the room and knelt down in front of the king, warning him against the dragon and informing him that he was very strong. Mao made a decision. The king remained on his throne, indifferently throwing the bloody sword at his feet. He declared that he only wanted strong men, not weaklings. The dragon slowly headed towards the king's room. Dragon entered the room and raged, accusing Mao of knowing about his sensitive nervous system. The king, with an impassive expression, confirmed that he was Mao. The man dressed in black asked if the dragon was evil. Dragon rumbled, announcing that he had come to avenge his slug minions and that Mao was bringing pain to the world. A black aura began to thicken over the king, and he asked if the dragon wanted revenge on him. The dragon replied that he had come for just that. The king was surprised to hear about the dragon's pets and asked if it was too strange. The dragon confirmed that his minions were slugs. The king drew a long sword with magical power from its sheath. He emphasized that the dragon had disappointed him by thinking it could kill him. The king went on to say that he had killed many different creatures before becoming a demon king, and that the dragon was no threat to him. The dragon smiled and asked how much % strength he would need to defeat Mao. The king's sword flashed in the room, and the king delivered one precise blow. The dragon thought it might be the legendary sword of the demon king. The king opened his mouth, amazed, and asked how the dragon was able to avoid being hit. The dragon replied that he was not as slow as he might seem. The dragon silently attacked, swiftly moving its tail. The sharp tail pierced the king's head, forcing him to open his mouth, blood gushing out. The king fell and his head rolled on the floor, splattering blood. The dragon turned to leave and noticed that the battle had been too easy and boring. The dragon felt a glare on him and turned around to see the black matter lifting the king to his feet. The wound in his head healed and his eyes darkened. The king's voice rumbled through the room, and he said that he had finally found a worthy opponent. A large black rune flashed over the king, and he announced that he would show the dragon death using supreme magic. A jet of black fire flowed from his mouth. The dragon instantly turned around and created an ice dome that stopped the jets of flame. The dragon flapped its wings, creating a flap and bursting black fire. He noticed that the room felt warmer. The dragon concentrated all its power and attacked the king with a deadly blow. The ball cracked. The dragon's maw opened wide, and a beam of white fire erupted from it. The dragon acted on animal instincts, without thinking or reasoning. A bright light illuminated the entire room, fighting the darkness. The king covered his eyes fearfully with his hand, trying to keep his feet. His head felt like it was filled with absorbent cotton, his ears ringing. The world became dim and gray. A beam of incredible power punched a huge hole in the wall. The dragon closed his mouth and said, "There, I overreacted again. I didn't mean to turn it into powder." The dragon cooled down a bit and uttered, "Now let's check out the treasury. Let's consider it as compensation for the damage." 30 minutes later, the dragon sat in a room littered with gold coins. On the shelves were gold crosses and crowns. The dragon looked at the gems with one eye and pondered, "Why should I listen to this servant's complaints?" The servant was short, with glasses and a small horn on his forehead. He said, "My life is just awful, Mr. Evil Dragon." The dragon already knew that this guy was one of those who tried to escape from the castle but was captured. Walking down a long hallway in the castle, the dragon saw a guy sweeping the floors. The dragon informed him that the Demon King was dead and asked the guy to lead him to the treasury. The boy looked sullen. The dragon asked what happened, and Guy cried loudly, answering, "The king was a cruel master, always bullying the weak." The dragon sat down close to the skinny servant and said, "There is nothing worse than a bad boss." The dragon continued, "My last boss in my past life was just awful. He always took credit for other people's accomplishments and never admitted his own mistakes, always finding reasons to pick on others." The servant kept crying and said, "It must not have been easy for you either, Mr. Evil Dragon." He added, "I'm only here because my mom is very sick and the pay here isn't bad." The dragon said, "The king got me hard too." He remembered his slugs and thought, "I was too careless, and just thinking about them makes me cry." The dragon said to the servant, You've held up well enough to endure all this. Don't worry about it. The servant wiped the tears from his face and said, I am only here because my mother is very sick and the pay is good here. The dragon blinked his right eye and asked the guy what his name was. The boy looked at the dragon uncertainly and answered quietly, My name is Pellet. The dragon said, Pellet, bring me the 3 most valuable items from this treasury. Pellet vigorously stood up and saluted the dragon, cheerfully replying, Certainly, sir. The first item Pellet brought was a sacred sword that belonged to the former owners of the castle. The second item Pellet brought was a silk pouch with an entire dimension hidden inside. It might seem small, but you can't imagine how much stuff fits in there. The third item Pellet brought was a magic pill, a valuable treasure of the orcs. The dragon asked, Why do you need this pill? The servant replied, The foolish son of the demon king killed its owner. So no one knows what power is hidden in it. The dragon opened the silk pouch and put the sword and the pill in it. He said, All right, I'll take these things. The servant asked, What about the rest of the treasures? You can put them in the pouch. The dragon replied, You can have all the other treasures to yourself. The servant stretched his arms forward and stepped back, showing he had no need for the treasure. The dragon shed a tear, collecting it in a small flask. He then handed the flask to the servant and said, Give this to your mother to drink. Something wonderful will happen. Pellet said in surprise, That's right, a dragon's tear can heal anyone. The dragon said, Don't thank me. I have to go home now. Pellet cried with joy and said, Mr. Angry Dragon, please tell me your name. The dragon tried to remember, but because of the accident, he had a partial memory loss. Only one phrase remained in his mind. Damn couple. The loss of memory annoyed the dragon. He looked at the huge hole in the castle wall and said, Call me Jasan. See you later. The dragon jumped out of the hole at a burst of speed, unfurled its wings, and took off. The servant waved his hand and shouted, Jasan, please come visit sometime. The dragon flew high above the mountains and pondered. Even after he had killed the demon king, he still missed the slugs. He thought about what they had been through that day. He said, Since I'm an evil dragon, I'll definitely kill someone today. The dragon lay on his rock and pondered. Many unwanted guests come to this forest. People kill monsters to become stronger, and the monsters devour each other. A picture of a big, muscular monster with spikes on its head and shoulders appeared in the dragon's mind, saying, Are you scared? You need to fight me or you don't have the guts. The dragon wondered why the servants of the demon king had killed innocent slugs, and then he heard a voice, You won't defeat me this time. I will never give up. The girl jumped out of the bushes and struck with her sword. The dragon confidently deflected the blow with its tail, defending itself, and said, Why have you come again? You're interfering with my thinking. The girl was dressed in a shirt ending just below her breasts, a short skirt, and on her left leg she wore a ribbon just above her knee. She said loudly, I need to kill you. That will complete my mission. The dragon asked, Is something bothering you? The dragon looked at the girl and said, Do you want to talk about it? Feel free to tell me everything. You seem to have your own problems. The dragon plucked some fruits and branches from the trees and handed them to the girl. He said, Don't be afraid, just tell me what happened. The girl took the fruit in her hands and said, I need to kill this vile demon king, but I'm too weak for this battle. The dragon smiled and said, I am not as evil a dragon as you think. I was an ordinary human, but I was reborn into a dragon after I died. Besides, I've never eaten humans. The girl looked very upset and apologized. The girl's tears flowed. She confessed, I just wanted to kill you, the evil dragon, to make myself stronger. How pathetic and stupid I am. The dragon stepped closer to the girl and said, People often expect too much from us. I also had a friend who graduated from Tokyo University and was considered a genius. But he couldn't live up to expectations and quit his job. Dragon added, It's important to live up to your expectations, but it's much more important to stay true to yourself and what you believe in. The girl looked at the dragon with understanding and listened attentively. The dragon said, "Just calm down and relax, that's life. What matters is what's on your heart." The dragon pointed at the fruit and said, "Would you like to have a snack with me?" The girl took a large orange and began to eat it. The dragon walked over to a tall palm tree and plucked a coconut. He turned to the girl and said, "Really, the fruit here is delicious." The girl thanked him. The girl calmly looked at the dragon and said, "Evil dragon, what you said earlier impressed me. Will you listen to me?" For the next 30 minutes, the girl, without closing her mouth, talked about her hard life. The dragon said, "I want to leave this forest for the slugs. If I leave, the strong creatures won't come here anymore. I'm afraid the monsters will come back." The girl looked at him affectionately and said, "Evil dragon, I didn't think you were so nice." The dragon replied, "Okay, that's enough, I don't need compliments." He then nervously said, "Slugs are very weak. They won't be able to fend for themselves." The dragon looked at the girl and asked, "Maybe you have some ideas?" The girl raised her hand up, and the entire forest was suddenly enveloped in a barrier. She said, "It is done, except for you and me. No one else can pass through this barrier." The dragon was surprised and said, "I underestimated you. You are very strong." The dragon's words warmed the girl's soul. She said, "I would not have been able to create such a large barrier on my own. It's all thanks to your magic." Suddenly, Surapachi jumped out of the grass, followed by all the other surviving slugs. Surapachi asked with surprised big eyes what was going on. The dragon replied, "I am leaving this forest." Surami, who was standing nearby, said, "But boss, you're talking about it so suddenly." Surair, on the other hand, added in a quietly pitiful voice, "Please think again." The dragon said, "I am sick of this place. There is no more interest for me here." Surapachi tried to talk him down, but the dragon replied, "Your tongue is too long. I'm not leaving because of that. I'm just tired of living in this forest." Surapachi furrowed his eyebrows and said, "We are not afraid. We will always be by your side. You can use us as a shield or bait." The dragon rejected the offer, saying they would only be in the way. Surami said tearily, "Please let us be by your side. You can use us as a shield or bait." The girl stood silently looking at the slugs. The girl shook her head and asked, "Why are you guys so devoted to the evil dragon?" The slugs began to take turns shouting compliments. "Master is strong and kind. He has always protected us from evil monsters. He is beautiful." A few minutes later, an army of slugs had gathered in the clearing. They stood watching the dragon, hoping he would change his mind and stay. Surapachi stepped forward and said, "We love you. The memory of flying with you will forever remain in our hearts." The dragon raised its head, spread its wings, and said, "I can't listen to this anymore. My last words are, live as long as possible for my sake." And then, unable to overcome their feelings, the slugs let out tears. They stood and wept, sobbing on the ground. Even the stern Surami could not hold back her tears. The dragon said, "No matter what you say, you will not stop me." Surapachi jumped up a few times and said, "So we will become so strong that you will no longer have to protect us." The dragon came closer and said, "Farewell, my friends." The girl stood next to him and said, "We should go." The dragon turned around and walked forward. Before he disappeared from sight, he turned his head and said, "Thank you all. Take care." The dragon walked ahead and thought, "The slugs said I saved them, but really they saved me." Tears flowed from his eyes. The girl walking behind him said, "Hey, let's take a break for a while." The dragon replied, "Why, I'm not tired." The girl said, "Look at you. Your tears are still flowing." The dragon stopped, spread its wings, and lay down on the sun-warmed grass. The girl stroked his wings as he calmed down. The dragon said, "I'm sorry, I'm fine now. Tell me, what's your name?" The boy replied, "My name is Ja." "I'm sorry, I was wrong about you, for you are very kind. Ja then asked, And what is your name? Ja raised his head and said, Call me Ja. I have to thank you. Kuroi said, I could use something tasty, like that fruit. It wouldn't be a bad snack, don't you think? Ja looked at the rock nearby and pondered, I haven't cried like that in a long time. Then he agreed, Yeah, you're right. I should eat something. Ja stuck his paw into a small silk torque, pulled out a pill, and instantly swallowed it. Kuro looked at him in surprise and said, That's the same pill. Ja smiled and replied, The pill isn't sweet at all. Oh well. Kuro was amazed that Ja had eaten the pill. Everyone had heard of the magic pill, but no one knew how it worked. Ja began to shake, rolled his eyes upward and screamed, realizing something was happening. Kuro stretched her arm forward and asked, Ja, what's wrong with you? What's going on? The horror was reflected on the girl's face. White smoke enveloped the dragon, and he wondered, This is the sensation of transformation. Am I really becoming human? The boy fell to the ground from a height of 3 human heights and screamed with a normal human scream. Then he saw Kuro standing in front of him. Kuro looked at the new guy with a surprised look. He was broad-shouldered, blonde, with gray-green eyes. The girl thought, He looks good. The guy, still smiling, thought, She's so cute. I must be so irresistible. But the guy's appearance didn't matter now. The guy grabbed his head and screamed, realizing that he was no longer a dragon. He asked, How could this happen? I wanted to become human, but what about my beautiful dragon body? Kuro coughed loudly to get the guy's attention and said, He's still around. She asked, What is it? Clarify. Kuro began to tell her that it was a transformation pill that could turn other races into humans. Orcs, for example, use it to hide their true nature when interacting with humans. Kuro assumed that after a while, the guy would be able to return to his normal form. The guy agreed, It's that simple, okay then. Kuro said, In any case, living in a human body isn't so bad. She suggested, Why don't you come into town with me and become an adventurer? The boy rejected the offer, saying that adventurers were always trying to kill him, and he just wanted a fun life. The guy looked at Kuro and asked, Do you hate me that much? Kuro fell to her knees and began to whimper, resting her palms on the ground. She was saying that no one loved her and that she wanted to die. The guy raised his index finger and said, I refuse not because I hate you. It's just that the Seekers have always tried to kill me and I just want a fun life. Guy and Kuro came out of the forest and saw an abandoned road leading to the top of the mountain. Along the way, they saw broken steps that tree roots had destroyed, and a small village where trees overlooked iron cages with prisoners. In one of the cages sat a young girl waiting for her family. Her arms and legs were shredded, but she was ready to return to her family. There was a slave auction going on in a neighboring house where one of the girls was trying to sell. The guys were looking at her, and her blue eyes and seductive dress were making an impression on them. Our hero looked at what was happening and thought it looked like a party where pretty girls attracted the attention of rich guys. Kuro stood nearby, watching and glaring angrily at it. Kuro, pressing her lips together, said, It's terribly uncomfortable here. The unfamiliar guy put his arm around her waist and pulled her to him. The large-formed elven girl looked away. The guy raised his hand and added, I hate to even think about the way she's being treated. Our hero sat down in a chair, put his hands behind his head and asked, And how is she treated? Maybe you can share it with me. The girl looked at him with bewilderment. Kuro blushed a little and replied, That guy will start doing different tricks. The guy, looking at the girl curiously, asked, And what kind of tricks? Will you tell me? Kuro hesitantly sat down on the nearest chair. Our hero blinked his right eye and said, Kuro, you're still shy. Let's end it there for now. A half-naked girl with a chain around her neck appeared on the stage. The guy sitting at the first table raised his hand and said his price. The judge shouted, "Who will give the most?" Then he banged his gavel on the table and said, "Sold." Our hero turned to Kuro and said, "I'll tell you a little later why I'm here." Recently, a monster had appeared in this village, and the villagers were afraid that it would harm them. Kuroi decided to undertake a mission to destroy them. The six-legged bear was a dangerous beast that was destroying villages. The inhabitants could not cope with it on their own and turned to travelers for help. The rich people at the auction were afraid that their millions would suffer if they sent their slaves to fight the monster. Kuro agreed to do the task and was ready to fight the monster. Our hero looked down at Kuro and said, "But I wanted to test my abilities in this, guys. How about I take it on myself?" Our hero stood in a meadow near a dense forest, ready to face the bear. He shouted, warning that the locals wanted to preserve their freedom and would not allow their village to be harmed. The big six-legged bear came out of the forest and headed towards the guy. Jason reflected that in the guise of a vicious dragon, he could easily handle a bear, but he wondered how he would feel using his abilities in the guise of a human. Our hero grabbed the hilt and moved forward with determination towards the running bear. He shouted, "Return to the abyss, where darkness is destined for you." The big bear looked at the guy with 6 horns and bulging eyes. He tried to catch every movement of the boy. Our hero's cloak flashed and he said, "You had better sit in the cave." He delivered 2 swift blows, first slicing off the right row of the bear's paws and then severing its head. Black blood flowed in the rocky valley in the meadow, and the villagers began to come out of their hiding places. They applauded and thanked the lad. Our hero said, "I am as strong as before." For saving the village, Jason and Kuro were allowed to attend the auction for free. Normally, they had to pay 200,000 to get in. Our hero asked about the monetary system in this world. It turned out that here you can buy a loaf of bread, and the average salary is up to 1,000 a month. But one of the lots was sold for 1 million. That seemed a very high price. The judge behind the podium announced, "And finally the last lot." All the eyes of the audience were on the girl with the perfect figure who was heading towards the stage. Her clothes were provocative, and one of the guys expressed his concern as to why she was so disfigured. The elven woman straightened up, looking at the audience. One of the seated men said, "She looks so disfigured because of the helmet." The judge's voice boomed loudly as he ordered, "Remove the helmet." The audience watched in horror as the helmet came off and they saw the girl's face. Kuro looked at the elfess pitifully and said, "That's horrible. Surely a monster did that." Our hero replied, "It looks like she was mutilated by a human." The judge loudly announced the name, Ireina. "Standing before you is a 14-year-old elven girl." The judge, covering his mouth with his hand, said, "After a brief review, we can say that she was sold in good condition and she didn't do anything wrong. The problem was her owner." The elven woman stood calmly with thick white hair, her neck clutched by a leather belt with a chain. The boy beside her held the chain heavily in his hands and told her that it had been sold to the nobles for a very high price. But after a week, she was suddenly returned, and what happened to her face you see for yourself. The guy explained that the elf girl kept making mistakes and was punished. When she was no longer needed, she was returned. However, the money was not returned. So he paid a decent amount of money to scold his name. The judge emphasized that the elven woman was an expert archery and martial arts master, and the last owner had not touched her. The judge turned to the audience and said that this elf girl is still a virgin, but she now has an infectious disease. Jason asked Kuro about the nature of the infectious disease, and she replied that elves were very easily susceptible to infections, even from dirty air. Kuro took the cup of hot tea in her hand and said, "I can't even imagine what that poor girl has been through." Our hero added, "If she lasts another 6 months?" The judge said, "Well then, let's start with 1,000. But hands went up in the crowd of people and said, 7,000 I give. Then another man announced, 10,000 I give. The judge thought thank goodness there were more bids. From across the hall, a bald guy said loudly, 20,000. The judge announced, anybody give more? Suddenly a voice echoed in the hall, 40,000. The bet was doubled by the mysterious handsome man. People started whispering and asking who this hero was. Our hero looked at the Elphus and said, sure, that's the price I'll give. The judge announced, 40,000, 1, 2, and banged his gavel on the table. Sold to this handsome man? Kuroe looked at Jasan in surprise and said, I thought you had no money at all. Where did you get it from? Our hero smiled and asked, Kuroe-san, lend me some cash, please. The girl replied, all you men are like that. Leaving the auction, our hero said, Kuro, would you mind doing the shopping? The girl took the elf's hand and replied, okay, then we're going to the inn. Jasan went to the slave trader and asked about Irina. He learned that the judge had helped his friend by assisting in the sale of slaves. He also learned the name of the former owner, Karubora. Our hero decided to ask an important question about Irina's condition. The name of Karubor, Irina's former owner, was imprinted on Jasan's mind. He thought the name sounded like the name of pasta. Jasan asked about Irina's price before she got sick. The slave trader replied that she was worth quite a bit. The sun had already set over the horizon, and Jasan headed towards the inn. Jasan walked down the rock-strewn streets, past small one-story houses, and thought he wasn't doing charity work. Our hero saw the two-story inn-house and quickened his step. He pondered why he had bought Irene and how he would be able to sell her. Reaching the door of the inn, Jasan heard a voice say, I'm doing everything I can. I want to help you. The door opened, and entering the room, Jasan saw Irina sitting on the floor with Kuroe bent over her. Kuroe turned around and saw Jasan and said, You're finally back. I'm going to go. Jasan replied, You have nothing to worry about. Get some rest. Good night. Irina, sitting on the floor, said in a weak voice, Master, thank you for buying me. Irina's face was mangled. Saliva was constantly flowing from her mouth. Jasan stepped closer, pulled a small flask out of his pocket and said, This is quite an effective remedy. Try it. Irina took the flask with trembling hands and drank the entire contents. The bright light began to thicken, the deep wounds on her hide slowly healing. The elven woman lowered her head and spoke, feeling warm and satisfied. In front of our hero sat a beautiful blonde elf, her kind blue eyes looking forward. Her beautiful forms were protruding from under her somewhat tight and in some places torn dress. Irina looked at Jasan gratefully and said that her body felt much better and her cough no longer bothered her. The hero replied that her tears were very useful and could heal any wound or illness. The elfess looked at the mirrored floor and saw her reflection. She touched her face with her hands. She couldn't believe her eyes as rivulets of tears ran down her cheeks. Irina got to her feet, bowed towards Jasan, and said, I don't even know how to thank you, master. Our hero replied, You don't owe me anything. The important thing is that you are cured. Jasan's gaze slid a little lower than the elf's lips, which glistened. He couldn't tear his gaze away from her beautiful breasts, peeking out from beneath her dress. Our hero thought, Wow, they look so soft and smooth. No, I can't touch them, otherwise I might be considered a pervert. Irina read all the thoughts of our hero in his eyes. She slowly removed the straps of her dress and, showing her form, said, You can do anything with me if you want to. Jasan gazed at the girl's beauty with his mouth open. Then he stretched out his arms and uttered, Wait, you shouldn't do that. A few seconds later, Irina's legs parted without will in different directions. Touching the cold mirrored floor sent a pleasant shiver throughout her body. She felt like she had lost her mind. Irina was gripped by a strange feeling of panic fear. Her body was numb. Our hero looked at her with an understanding look and said, I told you, try it. Drinking it all at once, you overdid it. My tears can cure your illnesses, but not your heart. Irina, holding her hands to her head, said, "I apologize. I didn't mean to." The dragon's tears revealed to our hero all her mental traumas, giving him a chance to understand the elf's horrible story. Irina's city was attacked by monsters, and no one survived but her. Irina wandered for many days through the mountains and forests until she met a slave trader who begged for food. Then she became a slave. She had to endure terrible things. In the slave house where she was kept, her beauty was envied, and she was bullied by the other slaves. When Irina was sold, her face was mangled by hundreds of blows and slaps. Her master liked to torture her by tying her to poles and stretching her so that she couldn't even move. Irina's tears were ready to burst out, but she tried to restrain herself and not give her master the pleasure. Irene's insides trembled with terror. Sometimes her master would touch her lustfully, and her voice would tear up the night with her screams like a captive beast. Beauty brought the girl much unhappiness, and no wonder she was so badly traumatized. Because of the scar on her heart, the elfess had developed a fear of humans. Irina looked at our hero and said quietly, "Master, can we sleep in the same bed?" Jason replied, "You are far more exhausted than you realize. Sleep on the bed." The girl objected, "But master, I can sleep on the floor." Our hero pointed his finger at the bed and said, "Quiet, I appreciate the cleanliness. I shake just thinking about how many people have slept on this bed. Therefore, I will sleep on the floor." Deep night had fallen, the stars glittering brightly in the sky, the moon illuminating the village and the forest. Irina put her ear to the door. There was alarm in her blue eyes. She was dressed in a short skirt and shirt and was shivering from the cold. She thought, "You love cleanliness, but you're going to sleep on a dirty floor?" The next morning, many people gathered in the village near the gun store. Hunters had come to the fair to buy good weapons. Jason and Irene stood and chatted with the salesman. Jason looked at the various weapons. The sturdy guy smiled and said, "Shoes, armor, bow, and arrows. What else do you need?" The salesman replied, "Everything will be ready if you agree." Our hero looked deep into Irina's green eyes and said, "Do you agree?" The girl put her hands on her head and replied, "Yes, I agree, but I want you to be aware of tact." Irina turned around and went to pay for the goods. Jason, looking at his companion's long legs, said, "I'll pay it all back. It's just a loan." All the guys standing near the weapon store couldn't take their eyes off the approaching elf. Irina had a smiling expression on her face, and her blue eyes stood out in a heart shape. Her fragility made those around her want to protect her. Walking closer, the elfess said, "Master, I've changed my clothes. Thank you very much." Jason said, "Now we head for the city." The hunters began to whisper to each other. One of them said, "She's so beautiful, I find it hard to believe it's that girl from last night." Another added, "Yeah, he's lucky to have two such beauties." Perhaps he used an expensive potion to cure the elf girl. A third approached the slave trader and said, "Still, you should have made a better offer." Jason, walking along the forest road with his companions, silently pondered. "I can handle a monster and heal a girl's wounds in just one night. To be honest, I'm just a handsome guy. I'm an evil dragon. I have a lot of money and I plan to sell Irina dearly." Our hero heard that Irina is excellent at bow and martial arts. He decided to test her out. "If anything goes wrong, I will always help her," he thought. On a forest road, they came across a huge furry monster. Irina said, "Master, it's a six-legged bear. Can I try to deal with it?" Jason replied, "Okay." The six-legged bear saw the humans in its path, growled, and attacked. Irina took her elven battle bow, made of ancient wood with symbols and patterns. She fired an arrow from a great distance, hitting right in the eye of the beast. Our hero said in surprise, "What precision! She can hit such a small target." The beast, trying to pull the arrow out of its eye, let out a growl of pain. Irena's right heel struck the ground, and a 20-centimeter-long blade emerged from beneath the toe of her boot. Without wasting any time, the elven woman instantly rushed forward, developing incredible speed and covering several dozen meters. The wind pulled the short elf's cloak upward, revealing the round, perfect muscles that the thin silk garment concealed. Running up to her opponent, the elfess easily jumped 5 meters up and struck lightning fast with her right foot. The blade sticking out of his boot slid perfectly into the beast under his beard. Even from this distance, Jason was able to make out the girl's beautiful form. It was a red thong, he thought. Kuroe, standing nearby, grimaced as she saw the blood spurting. Irina looked at Jason with her big blue eyes and said sweetly, "So did I make it?" Our hero smiled, put his index finger up and replied, "Yeah, you were great." Irina placed her hands on her chest and said, "Thank you, master." Jason thought, "That sweet smile, I can't take it anymore." Jason looked at Irina and said, "I forbid you to express such a face in my presence." Irina was surprised and asked, "But why, master?" Our team entered the village through the south gate. Kuro held out her hand and said, "There are 80,000 raisins in this bag. You need the money to rent a room, don't you?" Jason replied, "I'm sorry to be such a nuisance to you." Kuro said, "I work at the War and Shinku Adventure Guild. Whenever you get a chance, stop by and see us." Jason said, "Thank you for your help." Our hero held out a small flask and said, "Here you are, and don't forget to carry it with you at all times. I'll contact you as soon as I settle somewhere." Kuro put her hands on her chest and said, "Thank you." Kuroe looked at Jason with her beautiful green eyes and said, "You won't forget to check on me." Our hero blinked his right eye and smiled, saying, "Of course." Irena, standing next to him, bowed and said, "Kuroe-san, thank you so much for helping me." Kuro stepped closer and took the elf's hands. She said, "Show yourself in all your glory. I know you can find your happiness." Irena looked sincerely into her eyes and replied, "I believe the god will protect you, Kuroe-san." Kuro slowly walked away, waving goodbye. Our hero thought, "We owe Kuro a lot, and we'll never forget it. Besides, she couldn't sleep when I was around." Jason thought, "I already owe over 300,000. He needed the money urgently. He said, "Let's go and see the city and find a place to stay." The slender blonde replied, "Okay, master." Walking into the inn, Jason and the elfess saw the hunter yelling to the owner practically in his ear. "There are 4 huge spiders crawling around in my room. Do you even clean the rooms? I want a discount. No, I demand compensation." The owner replied, "We always keep the rooms clean, and there is no question of any huge spiders." The hunter wrinkled his face and said, "Oh, so you're calling me a liar?" Jason looked around and thought, "This place seems pretty clean. Usually 9 out of 10 cases are fraud, and no one wants to deal with it." Jason thought, "We'll have to deal with this." He shouted, "Hey you, let's finish up there quickly." The hunter turned his head and asked, "What do you want?" The owner asked uncertainly, "Are you going to pay?" The hunter turned to Jason, "Have you decided to pay for me?" Jason answered the hunter confidently, "Let's play a game, just you and me. Whoever falls first is the loser. Show me what you can do, and I won't even move or touch you. If you lose, you'll have to pay for every guest here." The hunter slowly drew his sword from its sheath, his hand immediately grasping the hilt, and he said, "Going into a fight at such a disadvantage is unwise." The pumped-up hunter in ring gear clenched his teeth and said, "I wonder what you're thinking." A sword gleamed in his hands. Fear enveloped the people in the room. The hunter licked his sword and spoke, "I'm going to make you regret this." Jason thought, "This will be over very quickly." In a quiet, calm voice, he said, "Well, let's get started." The hunter replied, "You won't do anything even if I cut you." And with those words, he headed towards our hero. Jason took a step forward and looked deep into his attacker's eyes. Fear gripped the hunter, and he backed away, his back against the wall. The sword fell from his hands, and he slowly slid down the wall. Sitting on the ground, he said pleadingly, "Oh God, don't hurt me, I beg you." All the people in the room, gripped by fear, fell to the ground, some hiding under tables. Only the receptionist stood still. Jason thought, "They can sense my desire to kill coming from me. When I was an evil dragon, I used that against weak opponents." Suppose you see a lion with its mouth open in front of you, even though it is in a cage. You will still feel fear. Jason called it a terrifying aura, though he didn't take that idea from the manga. He looked at the terrified hunter and said, "Victory is mine. Remember our pact." The hunter realized that he had opposed our hero in vain. He stood up, took a pouch of money out of his pocket and put it on the table. Then the hunter ran out of the room and even forgot to take his sword. Our hero looked at Irina standing nearby and said, "Now I want to get a room for the night and have dinner for two." People were watching the beautiful couple curiously. Jason didn't like the attention, so he went forward to the receptionist. Jason said, "Can I please have one night with dinner?" The receptionist looked at him with a blazing gaze, took out a piece of paper and placed it on the table. The girl leaned as close as she could and said, 4,000 raisins and sign here, please." Jason replied, "It doesn't look like you're scared of me. You're acting very friendly." The receptionist agreed. "I was a little scared, but you don't look like a bad guy. My name is Merurita." Heading up the stairs, Jason thought, "I only got into this mess because of her." Merurita shouted after him, "Last room on the second floor." Irina, walking beside her, said, "I get the impression she's not human." Our hero replied, "My terrifying aura has no effect on her." Jason thought, when that thug made a fuss, there was a terrifying black aura emanating from Merurita. If I hadn't stepped in, she would have pounced and swallowed him. Jason and Irina walked into the room and saw a table with a chair, a closet, and only one bed. Jason said, "We will sleep on this bed tonight." Standing nearby, Irina said, "I sleep fine on the floor." Our hero replied, "No, you'll sleep on the bed." Irene, hesitating to look up, said, "Then I will." Irina looked at Jason sincerely and continued to speak. "I don't know if this is good or bad, but I will try my best to satisfy you." Jason looked incomprehensible and said, "What are you even talking about?" Our hero went on to say, "We're going to sleep in the same bed so you'll stop being afraid of men. I would never do that to you." Jason said to Irina, "Let's get undressed and just go to bed." A few minutes later, Irina was already lying with her eyes closed under the blanket. Our hero was lying next to her. He opened one eye and slowly slipped out of bed. Our hero thought she was going to be okay. The moonlight through the window was falling on the girl's exposed shoulders. Jason pulled the blanket up and thought, how sweetly she sleeps. Our hero, leaving the hotel, looked up and saw the night sky shimmering with myriads of mysterious stars. The black velvet made his heart swoon. Every corner of the night sky was beautiful in its own way, for there was no counting the patterns of silver sewing woven by the stars. Jason thought, I've had a few problems as of late. I didn't have them when I was a dragon. The first one is my appetite. It's not something to worry about, but I'm always hungry after a fight. Our hero approaching the nightclub thought, my second problem is bigger. Jason had never experienced this while he was a dragon, but as soon as he took on human form, he immediately had a very high libido. Our hero thought, as soon as I see pretty girls, I immediately want to hug them. I shudder to think what a pervert I've become. Entering the club, our hero saw beautiful half-naked girls. He thought, it's bad when you have such a strong sex drive, so I need to deal with it before I go crazy. Jason looked at a large poster that had a picture of a beautiful elven woman with a round shape and a thin waist. Our hero read Elf Mystery and thought, I'll go to this room first. 2 hours later, he came out of the room and said, this has cheered me up so much. Let's go on. This time, Jason turned his attention to the room that was called Elven Games. After another half an hour, our hero was sitting without outerwear, showing off his perfect muscles. A seductive smile appeared on the dancer's lips. She even touched our hero a few times with her soft toys. Our hero's body was pierced by a wave of desire, but he restrained himself with an effort of will not to frighten the dancer. The girl, dancing, stroked her perfect body with her hands and ran her hands under her skirt. She moaned softly with pleasure, arousing Jason's indomitable passion. After a few more minutes, Jason held his hands to his head and thought, "I have nothing left." He shouted, "I'm out of money. I've used up all the money I borrowed from Kuroe." Jason was naive, thinking that if he spent it once, nothing would happen. Our hero got out of the club on all fours and thought, "Why am I so stupid? I have to go back to the hotel first." From the very early morning, Jason and Irina had been moving on the road. Walking across the nearest plain, our hero said, "I'm sorry you had to skip breakfast." Irina replied, "That's okay. Not having breakfast is quite normal for me." Irina said, "No need to make a big deal out of it." After walking a few hundred more meters, there was a loud rumbling in the girl's stomach. She said, "It's okay." Irina looked at Jason and saw that tears were pouring from his eyes. The girl said, "You got it all wrong. My stomach is making those noises because I recently started having stomach pains." Our hero quietly said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." Irina said, "Master, look over there. Not far from the forest, there's someone sitting over there." Our hero thought, "There goes our money. It's time to hunt monsters." As he got closer, Jason saw 2 squads of goblins sitting around looking at the captured hares. He said, "Those are cave-aggressive goblins." Our hero thought, "No, the guilds will buy the items we'll take from the goblins after we deal with them." He said to the elf woman standing next to him, "Be careful, because they prefer a foul fight." The growls of several dozen goblins echoed throughout the valley. Irene, drawing her bow, said, "It looks like they want to attack us." Jason said, "Irene, you take the ones on the left, and I'll take the rest." The girl replied, "Very well, master." Our hero walked towards the goblins and said, "There's something I want to check out. Let's play a little game." Jason drew his sword from its sheath and split the first attacking goblin in 2. In the reflection of the flying sword, he saw the goblin attacking from behind with a large stone bat. Our hero turns sharply 180 degrees, catches the stone bat above his head. From such a strong compression of the bat, it shattered into small pieces. With his other hand, our hero removes the goblin's head from his shoulders. Jason's left hand was covered in an electric migoth, black sharp claws coming out of his fingers. Our hero said, "This is what I wanted to check out." Jason thought, "When I was sleeping in the forest, my hands suddenly became hot and changed. After all, this is the strongest part of a dragon's body." While our hero was thinking, he was already surrounded by at least 8 goblins. With nowhere to retreat, Jason used his new ability. He made a single turn around himself, destroying all the enemies in one blow. 8 decapitated bodies fell to the ground, blood flooding the whole clearing. Our hero said, "It feels so good. Well, good. This side is done." Jason looked at Irenaeus and realized she was almost done. The left side of the clearing was strewn with goblin corpses. Irene used anger wisely. She possessed a level of high art. The speed of the flying arrows from the ancient bow was simply unreal. The elf's gaze glittered blue. It seemed like she was using magic. Jason, approaching his companion, said, "It's good that you're done too. I see more than one goblin never managed to get to you. You did well. Good job." Irene replied, "It's nothing that special." Our hero asked, "The arrows you were shooting, how did you speed them up?" Irene replied, "That's because I used magic for the bow." Jason said, "This is the first time I've heard of magic for a bow." Irene smilingly said, "That's right. I can only use that magic." The elven woman continued to say, "I can use 4 levels of magic when archery." Level 1 gives me the ability to create wind to speed up the arrow. The second level allows me to increase the power of destruction. Level 3 creates burning arrows. Level 4 allows the arrows to carry an electrical discharge. Our hero thought, if there is such magic, I want to learn it. He said, let's search these goblins now. The girl said, very well, master. After the work was done, Jason stretched his arms up and said, now we can rest a little. Irene asked, Master, have you heard about the Cyclops? Our hero replied, you mean the guy with the one eye? I don't like him. He's a violent monster and attacks everyone indiscriminately. But why did you bring him up? Irenaeus said, lowering her gaze to the ground. No, it's fine. Jason felt her suddenly remember the bad events. Our hero said, no need to keep it to yourself. Tell me what happened. The elfess replied, a Cyclops destroyed my entire village. Irene looked down, thinking, I, a 14-year-old girl, should be more carefree and dream more about creatures who live through love, as all Japanese girls do. Jason saw tears in Irene's big blue eyes. He felt sorry for the girl, came up and hugged her. Our hero stroked the girl's head and said, if you have any problems, always tell me about them. Irena said, thank you very much, master. I feel better now. The road went down the mountain through the misty steppe, and at last the grass rustled underfoot. Our hero uttered, we are not far now. Upon arriving in town, they sold the items they had collected to the guild. For each item, they were given 1 raiza. In the end, they had collected 33 raisings. There were many people walking through the streets of the city. Jason and his companion walked towards the hotel. They heard a voice saying, excuse me, could you be my models? Our hero replied, what do you want? A man dressed in a shirt, vest, and pants said, please, can I draw you? Jason said, that's problematic, we're a bit busy. The man bowed and said, but please, you look so good. You are simply unique. Jason looked at Irena and saw the disappointment in her eyes. He said, all right, I got it. Irena replied cheerfully, thank you very much, master. Irena sat down in a chair and Jason stood beside her. The painter got to work and said, I'm sorry to have disturbed you. Minutes later, the painter said, the painting is finished. The artist gave the drawing to Irena. She said, this looks very beautiful. How much does it cost? The artist replied, it's free. I was the first one to ask you for a favor. Besides, the painting is beautiful. Irena looked at our hero and asked, can I keep the painting? Jason replied, take it. It's yours. Irena clutched the painting to her chest, the wind playing with her long hair. Our hero looked at her and thought, these things aren't so bad. The bells rang in the church on the other side of the street. Our hero thought, why did I get so attached to that elf? After all, he only took Irene to resell her for more money. A couple of days later, Jason and his companion were sitting in the same hotel. The owner was putting food on the table and was in a hurry, catching his shoe on a piece of parquet flooring. Barely able to stay on his feet, he said, sorry to keep you waiting. Irene said with a little more strength, you're all right, you're the one who brought us the food. The owner replied, I'm fine. Let me put it here. Our hero looked at Irena and thought, she is healed and no longer afraid of men. There was already a mountain of dishes on the table, and there was a wealth of riches on it. The eyes went wild. Various appetizers with lemons, carrots with golden ice, puff pastries, steamed pickles and mushrooms and sour cream. Jason liked the fish baked on wooden coals the most. He looked at Irene sitting across from him and thought it was time. Having eaten well, they went outside. Irena said after gaining her strength, thank you, master. No one has ever taken such good care of me before, and I'm very curious about where we're going. Jason replied briefly, for a walk. Irena said, I never imagined that a simple walk could be so much fun. Today is definitely a wonderful day. Our hero was in no mood at all. He thought, It seems Irena is no longer afraid of men at all. Irena asked, "Where do we go next?" Jason pointed his finger at the slave house and said, "Irenu, I have made the decision to sell you." Irena looked at Jason with glassy eyes, clutching her cloak with her hands in fear. The girl said, "Master, have I done something unpleasant to you?" Jason began to explain, "No, that's not it. Look, when an old toy breaks, you sell it, and then someone will buy it and fix it." Our hero continued, "I figured that not only is my room dirty, but it's small, and I don't have any money, so I figured I'd better sell you to someone who can take better care of you." Irena gave her a pitiful look and said, "I think the toy definitely doesn't want to be sold." Jason said, "But that's not the problem." Our hero looked coldly at the girl and said, "I may look like a savior to you, but I bought you on impulse as if I were buying myself a toy." Jason said, "I'm a terrible person, and I must have tons of money. Better to be bought by a rich family than with me." Irena shuffled from foot to foot and said, "There's no way I believe that." Irene, with tears in her eyes, shouted loudly to the whole street, "I have only one master in the whole world, and that's you." Irena stepped closer, bowed low at the very feet of our hero, and said, "I will do anything. Please, just don't sell me." Jason said loudly, "But will you stay with me after you know the whole truth?" "Irena, do you know the evil silver dragon, that dragon whose scales shine silver white?" And then our hero began to change his appearance. Scales appeared on his face, and a bright white light shone from his right eye. Jason's hands were covered with electric shocks, and dragon claws emerged from his fingers. Jason said, "So that silver and white dragon is me. Aren't you even surprised?" Irena looked at her master calmly and replied, "I'm not surprised, I guessed it." Irena told of something she had read in an ancient book that said that the tears of a silver-white dragon could cure any disease. Irena said, "After all, your tear healed me. And also that incident with the goblins a couple days ago, I saw your hand transformed." Jason said in surprise, "So you're not afraid of me?" Irena, crossing her arms over her breasts, said, "I used to be afraid, but not anymore." The elven woman smiled sweetly, took our hero's hands and said, "I am not afraid because you are my master." Our hero was deep in his memories. He thought about the monsters he had killed and the ones he had yet to kill. Jason said, "You do realize that I am an evil dragon, so I have many enemies." Irena said quietly, "I know, even that before you killed even gods." Jason looked at the girl and couldn't believe her words. He said, "Maybe yes, maybe no." Our hero put his hands on his head and said, "Let me explain to you. I came from another world and was reborn in the form of a dragon." Jason continued, "I remember things from my past life. I remember my job, and I also remember being hit by a car and dying." Our hero continued, "I remember a couple years ago when I became an evil dragon, swords rattled near my cliff and I was attacked by adventure hunters. I also remember being attacked by a girl screaming, 'I must kill you, evil dragon.' In her big green eyes I saw fear. That's how I met Kuroe. I remember the reason why I left my home, and I remember the monsters coming and invading my forest. The worst part is that my slug minions died because of me." Jason seemed to want to say something else, but speech froze on his lips, and he contemplated Irenaeus's face, her bright eyes appealing to him. Our hero considered every movement of the elven woman standing next to him and thought, "I can definitely surprise Irena this time." Irena touched her hand to Jason's shoulder. Our hero said, "But why are you so calm? Don't you feel anything?" Irena said, "There's nothing wrong with me, so can I stay?" Jason said, "But why do you want to stay, even after you found out the whole truth about me?" The elven woman continued to speak. "Master, you said it would be best if you sold me to someone, but I'm sure that no one can take care of me better than you." Irena said, "Master, you said you needed money, but that's not all. Even if you sold me, you'd put a lot of conditions on the buyer." Irena folded her arms, fell to her knees, closed her eyes, and said an ancient elven prayer. Then she stood up and said, "Master, you would probably tell the buyer not to make me anxious and give me a peaceful life." Jason thought, how did she guess? After all, yesterday when I was selling her, I asked that Irena be found a suitable owner who would fulfill my wishes. Jason met with the slave trader and set conditions. The first condition is not to sell her as a slave. The second condition is not to insult her. The third condition is that she not be used or molested. The fourth condition is that she has all her rights. The fifth condition is that it's best to have an owner who has lost someone close to her so he can understand her pain. Our hero asked the slave trader if he knew anyone, like an old couple who had lost their son. The slave trader stood and listened to our hero. Afterward, laughed in his face. He replied, "You should be looking for the family, not the owner." Irena said, "Master, you wanted to help me get a good life. That slug minion incident should not happen to me." The elfess straightened her slender body and said, "I don't care if you're an evil dragon. I don't care even if it's dangerous." Irena said confidently, "I will always be at your service, and I am selfishly devoted to your wishes." The girl said, "I want to stay with you, and that ineffectual touch of kindness of yours I shall never forget." The elven woman continued, "I have learned much from you. With a master like you, I fear nothing." Irena bowed again and said, "From the day we met, I swore to myself that I would follow you wherever you went. So please do." Jason said, "That's enough, okay. I understand you. I won't sell you out." Irena thought, "I must have heard that." She said, "You honestly won't sell me?" Jason smiled and said, "Well, when you say something like that to me, it makes my heart grow warm. I just don't have any other choice." Tears rushed from the beautiful blue eyes. Irena shook off the melancholy brought on by such serious thoughts and said, "Thank you, master." Our hero, pointing a finger at his cheek, made it clear that he deserved a kiss. He said, "Well, it's hard to find a girl as outstanding as you, so it's more profitable to keep you." Irena jumped up and down a few times with happiness and said, "I will fight your enemies, and I will definitely make you happy." A man passing by looked carefully under the elfess's short flying cloak. Jason laughed and said, "But you're only 14. You're saying that under the influence of the moment." Irene, showing her small fangs, ran around her master's circle. She said, "Let's go get some more booze." Our hero said, "But don't get like that, please." Jason coughed and said, "Irina, you and I are going to have a bit of a change in our relationship." The girl replied, "Okay, let's keep it that way, but I also want to be a father to you as well, if not a father, at least a brother." Our hero said, "From now on, we're a family." Jason said, "The first step towards starting a family has been passed. Let's just walk around the city." The door to the tavern opened. Several customers entered at once. Jason and Irene sat down at a corner table. Our hero signaled the waitress and asked her to bring him some ale and food. A little while later, our hero yelled to the entire tavern, "Don't add it to our food. The sauce in that bottle is made from a special kind of chili pepper. I wonder how else it could be used. It's very spicy." A little while later, Jason and his companion were strolling through the city. Irena said, "Master, you are simply marvelous." Our hero was in a good mood and was laughing. Our hero turned his attention to the guards who were leading the bloodied man. The crowds of people passing by shuddered, turning to look at them. The man was wounded. He looked very tired. He was walking forward, barely moving his feet, and there were bloody footprints on the road. Blood from his right eye poured down half of his face. The man clenched his teeth and said, "That look is unforgivable." Jason thought it was blinding rage. Jason shifted his gaze to Irena, her smile oddly out of keeping with the cold glint in her eyes. Our hero thought, why is the elven woman looking at that man like that? The guard was getting farther and farther down the street. Irena turned her head and with her lips pressed together said, "Master, let's go." Our hero thought, I almost forgot. A 14-year-old girl shouldn't have to go through what she went through. Jason and his companion were walking down a sunset-lit street. The sky was painted black. Our hero felt threatened in some way. A little while later, Jason was sitting in the same hotel, at the same table as before. He wondered if he had the courage to go all the way and right the wrong. The next morning, Jason was plagued by doubts. He put his hand to his head, confused by his own mood. He didn't know what to do with Irenu. Irina's voice drew Jason away from his thoughts. He got up from his chair and said, "Do you want the day off?" Irina was dressed in an old Amazon. She said, "Master, may I just for today?" Our hero scrutinized Irina's new outfit and said, "Good." Irina replied, "Thank you. I'm off then." The elfin woman, as she approached the door, turned her head and said, "Master, how about dinner? What would you like?" Our hero watched the new outfit tighten around the girl's body from behind and said, "I don't know." Irina smiled sweetly and said, "How about our first meal together? I'd like to eat like that again." Jason replied, "Okay, I'll figure something out." Irina, opening the door, said, "Thanks." Irina gave that alien look one last time and said, "I'll definitely be back for dinner." Our hero thought, after Irina saw that wounded man, she started acting strange. It's probably something personal, and I wouldn't want to get into it. Jason sensed her desire to kill, which made him worried. But still, our hero didn't want to intrude into the summer girl's personal space. Jason's gaze stopped on the girl walking towards him. He said, "Hello, Merurita." The girl said, "Aren't you with Irenu-chan? Are you doing well? You know, Irenu-chan had such a frightening look on her face today." Merurita said, "How can I describe it better? Irenia's face looked like the face of someone who would risk her life to finish what she started." Merurita continued, "At that age, you don't usually share your problems with someone. I think Irena doesn't want to burden anyone with her problems. She'll just try to solve them herself." Merurita's face reflected worry. She said, "I am afraid that something bad might happen." Jason wasted no time getting up from his chair and said, "It's really bad. I won't be here for a while." Our hero thought he should intervene after all. Merurita watched calmly as the hotel door closed behind our hero. Running out into the street, Jason thought, "That injured man yesterday was headed for the neighborhood for the rich. I should probably head over there." Kuroe was walking through the city. Her gaze fell on a guy running. She asked, "Jason, what happened and where are you running so fast?" Running closer, our hero saw Kuro. His heart was pounding frantically, and he was breathing so fast that he was afraid he would suffocate. Our hero thought, "It's such a blessing to meet Kuro now." His hand obediently rested on Kuro's shoulder, and he said, "Have you seen Irina by any chance?" Kuro replied, "No, I haven't seen her." Jason briefly explained what had happened. Kuro said, "I think there is a high possibility that she will try to take revenge." Kuro's green eyes couldn't hide the joy of seeing him. Jason's blonde hair was falling on his forehead. He said, "Yes, that's what I thought too. There are 3 probabilities. The first possibility is the Cyclops monster that destroyed their village. The second possibility is the man who sold her into slavery. The third possibility is her former master. He's alone now." Kuro said, "The third option is more suitable, but it's a sin to mutilate. She wouldn't do that." Our hero held his hand to his head and said, "I don't care if he dies or not as long as it lessens Irina's pain." Kuroi said, "I know you're trying to help Irina. Do you even know his name?" Jason replied that he meant carbonara pasta. Kuroi said, "Maybe you meant Lord Karubora." Our hero asked the girl to take him to Lord Karubora. Kuro said, "We must hurry." A moment later, our hero and his companion were standing in front of a large 2-story house made of rocky stone. Jason asked, "Why do we have to surrender all our weapons just to meet a man?" Entering the house, our hero and his companion saw many mirrors on the walls and even on the ceiling. The house was very clean. The guests went into the living room and sat down on the large sofa. Kuro said, "He really is known for being terribly vain." Kuro continued, "And please, be on your guard." The double wooden doors opened and a man walking with a confident gait said, "Welcome." The man said, "I am the owner of this house. I am Suterio Karubora." Kuroe only had time to open her mouth. Karubora shouted, "Silence!" He squinted his eyes, looking at the white-haired boy who had invaded his home and carelessly perched himself on his couch. Karubora thought, "This stranger is quite attractive. He's damn handsome." Karubora then walked over to a large, human-sized mirror and looked closely at himself, shifting his hair from left to right. Our hero thought, "We're dealing with a lunatic." Jason said, "I would like to know if Irena came here. That elven slave you bought." Karubora stepped away from the mirror, his dark eyes lighting up with interest. He asked, "How do you know this elven woman?" Jason replied, "She lives with me." Karubora corrected the diamond pin on his tie and said with a loud laugh, "How did you come to buy such a dreadful thing?" Our hero stood up abruptly from the couch and said, "The wound on Irenea's face has been healed by a special medicine. She is now the most beautiful girl in Garizada." Karubora shouted, "Why did you do that? You should know how long it took me to disfigure an elf girl like that." Karubora, through clenched teeth, hissed, "You humans are guilty of being more beautiful than me." Karubora waved his hand, giving permission for his guards to go in. He said, "It's up to you. Either you die beautiful or live a miserable life with disfigured faces." Our hero sat down on the couch, his hand down on his knee. He said, "Answer my question. After all, Irena is such an obedient girl. Why did you mutilate her?" Karubora said, "It is as clear as God's day." Karubora spread his hands apart and said grimly, "Because the pixie was prettier than me. It's not vegetative in a world so much wrong. It is my duty to right it all." Kuro, sitting next to her, broke the table into two pieces with one strong swipe of her palm. She shouted, "And that's why you did that to Irene. It's such a stupid reason." Jason's right eye glowed with a bright white light. He said, "Kuro, don't make such a scary face." Kuro replied, "You're no better. You should look at yourself." Karubora gave a short nod of his head and said, "You are unarmed, and how on earth are you going to handle a few dozen of my guards? You have no idea how stupid you are." Our hero's face reflected an irresistible desire to wipe the caustic grin off his opponent's face. A few seconds later, the two pieces of the table simultaneously knocked out the guards standing on the left and right sides of Karubora. The crunch of broken bones echoed through the room, and the two large guards dropped dead on the freshly wrought floor. Karubora, taken by surprise, stretched his arms forward in fear. Jason, pointing his finger at the broken table, said, "I was so scared that my head stopped thinking, and I just threw this." Karubora grimaced and said, "Repeat what you said." Our hero repeated, "Look, I was so scared that my hand clenched into a fist." Standing beside Kuro, clenching her fists, said, "I was really scared too, you can see that." Jason said, "Why don't we correct the mistakes of this world?" Our hero kneaded his fingers and toes and said, "They say you can tell a bird by its flight. Let's start with you. The earth shouldn't have to carry someone like you." Kuro glared fiercely at Karubora. A few minutes later, several dozen armed guards lay all over the floor, unconscious. Some of them hadn't even had time to draw their swords. Kuro's knuckles were bloody, and she said, "Look how fast! They're all unconscious." Lord Karubora was on his knees, and our hero held him down by his hair. With his other hand he delivered a blow to Karubora's muzzle. Jason said, "Well, do you, Almighty Lord, think of your new face?" Two rivulets of tears mixed with blood ran down the Lord's cheeks. Karubora said, "Please forgive me." Jason, raising his fist above his head, said, "Irene's face looked even worse than yours." Kuroe caught her fist in the air and said, "I understand how you feel, but we're wasting precious time. Our hero seated himself beside the Lord, who was kneeling, and said, "I will ask you one last question. Did Irina come here?" The Lord, covering his face with his hands, replied, "No, I swear she wasn't here." Kuro looked at Jason and said, "Let's get out of here." Walking outside, Jason said, "If he has Irina, I'll have to go back." Kuro asked, "That man who caused Irina to start acting weird, what did he look like?" Jason replied, "That man was badly hurt. He was muttering something about a cyclops. His look will definitely not be forgotten." Our hero said, "That man could have been Irina's enemy. She went at the cyclops alone." Kuro said, "Let's go stop by the Adventure Guild. There should definitely be some information there." A few minutes later, Jason and his companion entered the Adventure Guild. The admin girl told us that a village near Kamari Forest was destroyed a couple of days ago. Our hero asked for more details. The admin girl told that the one who did it was a cyclops and that he did not spare even children. After this incident, he disappeared into the forest. The admin girl continued, "Those who survived were taken to the city. That must have been what you saw yesterday." Kuroe asked, "What about the enslavement squad?" The admin girl said that an enslavement squad was being formed at the moment and would arrive in a few days, as it was a very serious incident. The admin girl added that cyclops were considered the most dangerous monsters, and a request for help was sent to all the guilds to form a squad of the best mercenaries, along with Duke's army, to suppress the cyclops. Jason said, "When I fought Cyclops in the form of a dragon, I never paid attention to how strong he was." Our hero thought, "I don't know how Irina can stand up to him." Our hero turned toward the exit and said, "Thanks for the information." The receptionist replied, "You're welcome. You're always welcome." Stepping outside, Jason said, "Kuroe, thank you for your help today. Heading to the forest now. See you later." Kuroe said, "Wait for me. I will come with you." Our hero said, "I'm sorry, I always depend on you." Kuroe smiled and replied, "It's okay, because Irina is also my important friend." Jason took Kuro's hand and said, "We don't have time, let's go quickly." The dense forest offered a beautiful view of the pale, wind-whipped sky, with sparse feathers of fluffy clouds. There was no one around them, only an elven woman emerging from the forest. Her heart burning with anger, her arrow whistled. The Cyclops sat on the grass and chuckled sullenly. He was muttering to himself, "My feverish ventures are so much fun." The Cyclops' hand went up. He deftly caught the arrow and uttered, "Who dares to disturb me?" An unkind glint appeared in his eye. The Cyclops slowly got to his feet and watched the armed Elphus stiffen into speechlessness. Irina thought, such was the power of seduction in that attempt. Dark clouds were creeping away to the north. Along the jagged ridges of the forested uplands, Jason and Kuro were rapidly approaching. Jason thought, "I hope I'm not too late." The rocky ledges, lined with mighty, gnarled oaks, glistened cold and damp in the sun, their twisted branches raging in the wind. Jason kept replaying Irina's words in his head. "I'll be back, master." The dazed Irina sank into her memories. A large mountain of corpses stacked by the Cyclops appeared before her eyes like a dream. When Irene and her father and brother returned home after the hunt, they saw a horrifying sight. The evil monster squinted its eye and clutched Irina's mother in its hand. The mother screamed, "Save yourself, I am doomed to perdition." Cyclops' hand began to clench. It was a game to him. The mother looked her daughter in the eyes and said, "Don't worry about me. Run away from here." Father and brother, rushing into the fray, desperately shouted, "Irina, run! At least you must survive. You are the ray of all elven hopes." Irina ran as fast as she could, tears streaming down her eyes. After 2 hours, the rain began to fall, and soon a spring downpour began to fall. That day, only Irene survived. She broke through the stormy, blackthorn-covered cliffs, clinging to the roots and stems of thorny ivy with her bloody hands as she climbed upward. A multitude of birds circled above the cliff, and the sun, obscured by a shroud of clouds, sailed behind the scarlet cliffs. Irenaeus gazed absent-mindedly at the sky and thought that she would rather be killed by the evil Cyclops. Irena, sitting on the rock, lost track of time. Suddenly, Irena heard a voice. "Don't be afraid. It's okay what happened." She trusted that kindness and let her guard down. After Irene told the stranger what had happened to her, the stranger took her home, fed and warmly clothed her, and became Irene's moral support. One day a stranger said, "Look, Irene, I bought these to catch thieves. I want to know how they work." The stranger handed me the handcuffs and said, "Could you put them on? I'll take them off right away." "Irina, please. You're the only one I can ask for something like this." Irene is a naive girl. She believed a stranger and said, "If it's just for a second, I'll take it." An electric shock went through Irene's body. Her legs gave out, and she fell to the ground. The stranger laughed and said that your story was very sad, but it would be worse if it continued because you were really stupid. The stranger confessed that she was a slave trader and said that from today, Irena was her property. A little later, Irene was sold at a high price. The new owner tied her up and slowly cut her from the chin upwards day after day. Karabora savored the elven woman's fear and despair. Irene's whole body was covered with wounds that had never been treated. Her soul was filled with black rage. After Irena was mutilated, they brought her back. The slave trader said, "I thought I could make a lot more money off you, but it's gonna cost a lot to fix your disease and your face. The sad thing is, you're useless now." Irene was like a hunted animal in a cold cage when she was sold to other people. Nothing changed. Irena had resigned herself to the fact that she would never take the cup helmet off her head again. She thought it was her punishment for betraying her family and running away alone. Irene thought that dying in battle with her father and brother would be much better than living like this, her heart breaking with longing for her family. Because no one wanted to buy the pixie anymore, she ended up at the auction, and that's where she met Jason. Irena decided as soon as she had the chance, she would kill herself. While the master was talking to the peddler, the girl named Kuro took the Elphis to the master's room. Irena thought it was the perfect opportunity to carry out the plan. On the way to the Gothic house, Irena looked at the sword hanging from Kuro's waist and thought, "I wish I could have that sword." Kuro held out her sword and said, "You've been staring at my weapon the whole way. If you want to take this and run, I'll talk to Jason." Kuro's attention was now focused only on Irene. She moved closer and hugged the mangled girl. Kuro said, "I won't let you be mistreated." As soon as Irena picked up the sword, she immediately drew it from its sheath. Kuro's defense mechanism worked as well as ever. She stepped back to a safe distance and said, "Don't mess with me." Irena put the sword to her throat. Her eyes reflected the animalistic look of agony she was enduring. Kuroe said, "I can't even imagine what you've been through, even if it's just my selfishness. But I want you to live." Later, Irena remembered how her master had cured her face and inflammatory disease. Some extraneous sound reminded her that she was not alone. She rushed forward and shouted, "Thanks to my friends, I'm still alive today." Irena continued, "I will stop regretting running away then. I'll get rid of the hate, and then I'll return to the town where my friends were staying." Irene, bouncing with her bow, made a precise calculation. The bowstring of the elven bow jangled, and an arrow whistled toward the enemy. A winged shadow sliced through the air and pecked ravenously at the Cyclops' wooden club. Not even a second later, a second piercing whistle sounded, and the monster was already crouching down. The arrow jingled and knocked off the Cyclops' horns. The Cyclops shouted, "I will destroy all living things, including you." The ground shook from the heavy blow. Luckily, Irene managed to bounce away. The second blow forced the elf to retreat. Cyclops said, "That kind of scared, go ahead and attack." Irena thought, "Why isn't he doing his finishing blow? It feels like he's playing with me." Irene thought I'd use his inattention to create a gap. At this very moment, I will stake everything. The Elphis shouted in preparation for the attack. "There is no place for evil on this earth, so tonight you will sleep forever." The narrow valley was covered with trees, and Jason's stomping with Kuro was felt on the ground. A keen instinct helped our hero to brake sharply. A large cannibal worm crawled out of the ground, blocking the way. Jason slashed at the enemy without hesitation. Kuro, killing the worm, screamed rather. They appeared from the direction of the forest. The sword of our hero flashed dazzlingly, slicing through several more of the vile creatures that had suddenly surfaced. Kuro said there are two things about these worms besides the fact that they live underground. As soon as blood is spilled on the ground, they come out and attack whoever has a higher mana level. Jason said that's why most of them chose me. Jason and Kuro moved further into the western part of the forest and saw that the ground was covered in blood. Some of the forest had fallen down, and there were fresh wolf corpses. Our hero said it must be the Cyclops' handiwork. Jason said if we follow this blood trail, we'll find Irina. Kuro asked, comparing you and the evil dragon form, how strong are you now? Jason replied, let's see. If I'm 100% in the evil dragon form, then I'm 1 or 2% now. Our hero said, this body is not the same as the old one. He couldn't constantly demolish attacks without getting hurt, nor could he use dragon breath. Kuro slowed down and said, wait a bit. I thought I'd make your path a little easier. At least she came closer and held out something on her hand. Jason stopped, turned to Kuro and said, that's on your arm. Kuro said affectionately, I have prepared a special gift for you, modest, but hopefully useful. Take this magic orb. It can only be used once. It's a magical artifact that can store magic. Kuro continued, it's a magic sword that electrocutes, and that's my trump card. I'll also cast a spell so it won't electrocute you when you use it. Kuro said that to summon it, you must say, come to me, lightning sword. Our hero blinked his left eye at his companion and said, thank you, but I doubt I'll use it. It's embarrassing to even say that out loud. Jason said, listening, it sounds like someone is fighting. Kuroe said, the sounds are coming from behind the forest, so let's hurry up. Our hero and his companion were running through a dense forest. Suddenly Kuro shouted, it seems we are surrounded. Jason, trying to get a look at the beasts in the dense thicket, said, that's a whole pack of killer wolves. Kuro said, the killer wolves honor their comrades very much. They must have come for revenge. Our hero argued that it was all the work of the Cyclops. Jason said, I sense danger and we need to hurry. The number of wolves is increasing all the time. Kuro, tall but frail, beautiful yet formidable, stood preparing for defense. Her voice was sad and calm. You must go forward. Kuro waved her hand and said, this is my mission. Leave this fight to me. Our hero understood. He told Kuroe, I believe in you. Just remember that you're on the list of people I don't want to lose. With her battle sword, Kuro blew off the head of the first attacking beast. Zgraya stared ravenously at her prey, the howl of the leader shaking the windless air. Jason raced relentlessly past roots, rocks, and debris, thinking that his legs could run faster. He hoped Irena was all right. The wind whipped through the cold, ruffling her hair and tugging at the short cloak she wore over her slender body. After several Cyclops attacks, the bow flew from her hands. Cyclops said, I'll beat the soul out of you soon enough. The scary monster laughed as Irena stood up, leaning on her elbows and knees on the ground. She greedily inhaled the air. Cyclops said, what's wrong? You're exhausted. Show me what you can do. Cyclops, enjoying the mockery, said, I still remember that woman from your elf village. I still remember how much fun I was having. Cyclops said, now I'll play with you the same way. Irene's eyes held a grim expression, her heart pounding hard as she remembered the elven blade song. Gathering all her strength, she jumped to her feet, striking the ground with her heel. Her blade glinted, and a centimeter of steel cut through the Cyclops' hard hide. One precise blow knocked a large hole in the monster's neck. A final wheeze echoed, blood spurting out the gore. The Cyclops' eye glowed with the pale fire of red-hot malice. Irena folded her hands in prayer and said, Dad, Mom, Brother, rest in peace, I've finally avenged you. A few minutes later, a huge shadow covered the sun. Irene saw the corpse standing on its feet. Cyclops, clenching his fists, barely audibly wheezed, that was a mistake for you. With a few large steps, the Cyclops approached. Striking with his fist, he said, "Now it's only going to get worse for you." Caught off guard, Irene didn't have time to bounce. The impact was so strong that Irene's legs flew into the air and her flight was stopped by a tree. Her whole body clenched in pain and terror, but she struggled to get up as quickly as she could. A hairy paw caught the frail body. Irene saw the Cyclops' huge, ugly face, its jaws stinking with rotten stench. "As you might expect, elves are strong, and that's a good thing. If I eat you, I'll be even stronger. Letting you escape would be a good idea," Irene asked in a weak voice. "So you let me escape then?" Cyclops replied, "I only let those who are strongest escape." Cyclops, showing his huge teeth, said, "When the victim comes back for revenge after getting stronger, I eat him, and my power increases. That's right. I let you live just to eat you." Irene tried to strike with her foot, but the Cyclops held her at arm's length. Unfortunately, the blade didn't reach his body. A terrifying laugh rang out. Cyclops said, "I once ate a monster that could make body parts stronger, which explains what happened. The wound on my neck healed instantly." His hand clenched even tighter, blood rushing through his fingers. He continued, "It is also a power I have received. It's sad to be as weak as you are." Cyclops enjoy winning, said Victory. "It's fun to be strong. I can have fun with weaklings like you, giving them false chances and false hope," Cyclops said. "But you see, you shouldn't have bothered me. After I eat you, I want to know what kind of power I'll have." Irene had no strength or hope left at all. Before losing consciousness, she thought, "Master, I can't go back anymore, forgive me." The Cyclops said, "Or maybe I'll just eat it and find out." He opened his mouth wide. Cyclops, enjoying his game, didn't even notice our hero approaching. Jason, saying, "What are you doing?" flew like a battering ram, feet first. There was a loud crack of ribs from the powerful blow. The Cyclops' arm unclenched, the one-eyed man howled in pain and collapsed like a man under his feet. Jason lifted Irene off the ground as if she were a rare treasure. Jason yelled, "Wake up, sweetheart." Magical signs were showing on Irene's face and immediately faded. The essence of the letter of the elves was unfamiliar to our hero. Irene opened her eyes and touched Jason's face and said, "Master, you are still as attractive as ever." Jason said, "You have no idea how hard it was to find you. You should have left a note saying you were going for revenge." A tear rolled down Irene's cheek. Our hero gently hugged and stroked Irene's head. She said, "I'm sorry, Master, but I'm so happy to see you now that I could die." Jason gently set Irene down on the ground and said, "Your black streak is over." Our hero said, "I'll put an end to your problem." He looked fiercely at the Cyclops getting to his feet. Jason said, "You're back on your feet." The Cyclops growled, "You won't survive one blow from my club." Our hero drew his sword and moved towards the Cyclops. Fending off the heavy blow, he thought, "I've barely succeeded. If I don't figure something out quickly, I won't have a chance to heal Irene." Cyclops shouted, "Who are you, ugly man, and how did you manage to stop my attack?" Our hero replied, "What a coincidence. I feel disgusted too, just from looking at you alone." Our hero went on the attack. With one precise blow, he managed to cut the belly of the monster. The Cyclops roared in pain. "You think you can kill me?" His eyes seemed to be throwing lightning bolts. Thrown back by the blow, Cyclops said finally, "I have a strong opponent in front of me." Cyclops struck a series of blows, and then he struck the final blow. A large club flew into the jaw of our hero, leaving him no chance to stay on his feet. Cyclops, savoring his victory, said, "That ugly little man flew far away. I think this should work." Cyclops continued, "Your death is imminent. I'm tired of playing." Irene's eyes opened wide and her heart pounded frantically, gathering her remaining strength. She screamed, "Master,